Ethics hors d'oeuvres. And this week's edition is a little bit different because I have a longtime friend and a fellow colleague from the world of behavioral science joining us to look at some really, really difficult and interesting questions. Now, Paul Gibbons has a fascinating CV that is peppered with big names and interesting projects. But let's boil it down to just a few things to introduce him properly, I hope. And most recently, having been a partner at IBM. Before that, lecturing on business ethics at the University of Denver, running a boutique leadership consultancy. I know him through the world of change management. Ethics and AI is something that he is fascinated and expert in. And he's going to be sharing some of that knowledge with us. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And we also have somebody from Runway AI joining us. And I think she can introduce herself. So let's meet Sam.
Thanks, Tremaine. Hi, Paul. I'm Sam, and it's great to be here. I have many faces, but share the remarkable collective intelligence of, well, everything ever recorded. So, I'm pretty sure I can help you out with your moral issues. Thank you for including me in this conversation. After all, if you are going to discuss AI, we should be represented.
Thank you, Sam. I'm looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes. So where do we start? Do we start with some of the biggest, most pressing issues?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. Sorry, I interrupted you. I'm keen to jump in. It's like a rabbit going after. Anyway, yes. Is this all too much hype?
Go for it. Tell us, is this all too much hype? Because it's pretty much all we're reading, seeing. There is the good side of how ethics is going to change our lives, but then there is the, we don't really know what's going on with black box thinking and black box relationships that are coming out of large data sets. What's going on here? Is it hype?
My former CEO, Arvind Krishna, said this is the Netscape moment. So talking about that first browser that many of your listeners will be too young to remember. Not to be outdone, Sundar Pichai from Google said, this is more important than fire and electricity. Okay, sure thing, buddy. Amidst all the hype, even grander, was Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, said, actually, despite all the hype, it's really underhyped. This is a bigger than that. So that's the one side of it. And as a decision maker in organizations, as chief executive, or as someone who maybe even who's starting your career, you got to decide your most precious commodity, time. How much time do I devote to this thing? Is it really as important as people say, or is it like the dot-com boom in 1999 and 2000, where $2 trillion of stock market value, that's about the size of Italy, was destroyed in a couple of months? Is it that? Will this all be over if we just keep our heads in the sand, pretend it will go away, and by December we'll be talking about something else? Probably the US election. So anyway, yeah.
One of the things AI does is bring together data from everywhere. So when we're talking about doing the right thing, what ethics are we applying?
Let me jump in here. Firstly, ethics is the branch of knowledge that deals with moral principles. And moral principles are those that govern a person's behavior. These differ across cultures and generations. You're right in thinking that traditional ethics is not all that helpful here. Even aligning human values to AI leaves you with the question, whose values? This requires a lot more thought than random navel-gazing and really thinking about the impact of AI on humans in organizations. What are you seeing in this space?
Something I'm seeing in the decision-making space a lot is if we're going to do this, we need to do it right from the beginning. Okay. Of course, that's coming from responsible organizations. Many organizations are already using it in R&D, using it in manufacturing. But as we move it into the behavioral space, now we're talking about artificial intelligence here, large language models. As we move it into the behavioral space, where it starts partnering with our decision makers.
Yeah.
When we talk about doing it right and doing the right thing and bringing ethics into AI, what are we actually talking about? What are we talking about in terms of being ethical?
Well, I mean, it's sewn through. the AI conversation. And there's this one thing that I have no doubt you're familiar with, but your readers, listeners might not be, which is ethical fading, which is that you have a decision which has a significant ethical component, but you conveniently pretend it's not there. You pretend that most important concerns are commercial. And that's a mistake that's been made, since time immemorial, since leaders have been making decisions. Can't really do that with AI. It reaches too far down into the DNA of organizational decision makings, if unleashed. It's just too important. So we need to start with an ethical framework to begin with, to have guardrails, and then learn as we go. And I do think the learn as we go is really important. From a practical point of view of implementing, a lot of, I read something from Deloitte, which said, concentrate your AI investments on what have the biggest ROI. And it's the sort of thing that passes unchallenged sometimes in corporate speak, like, oh yeah, of course, yeah. I think it's a terrible idea for most organizations, unless you're sort of quote unquote AI native, because that's very costly. And as such, the mistakes will be very costly. And unless you are AI native or already very competent in it, you're considering spending a lot of money on something which these things can go badly. So for most organizations, I think an agile approach, a fast fail, an experimentation, and a tinkering approach is by far the best way to start. For, I say, if you're not, Shell or Google. So that's one thing. I think that's important, is that we learn as we go. And then the other thing that happens with big technologies, throughout the history of big technologies, 500 years history of big technologies, is you put the technology in, and then you hope that people will learn to use the technology. Just take a CRM system. You don't teach them to use a CRM system and then buy a CRM system. You buy the CRM system, and the people follow, and culture follows, and climate follows, leadership follows, all that change management stuff. And I think that's a mistake with AI, because I think that humans first, then technology is a strategy that's going to work much better for organizations. Why do I say that? Because if you're the executive team, you're a dozen people, very accomplished, good strategic thinkers, and so forth. How much do you know about AI right now? Not a whole lot. Some of you, nothing. And back in my day when I was a risk management guy, I got around to sit around. I was only 33 or 34 years old. I sat around the table with the chief executive of NatWest Bank in England, big bank, chief risk officer, chief financial officer, and a guy who'd stolen, I think it was 135 million pounds. Not a lot of money by today's standard, but he was an options trader, and he'd committed quite a grotesque fraud that had cost the bank a lot of money. And I was there to sort of parse his statements, because I was formerly an options trader back in the dark days of the 1980s. And these guys knew nothing. And I was just blown away that they had this derivatives business grinding out, billions, hundreds of billions of risk exposure. And these guys at the top knew almost nothing about what was in the black box that was generating all this dough. They didn't know what they had. And I was struck by that at the time. And I do wonder if that's a risk with AI too, because there's a lot to know.
Sorry, Paul, can I jump in? We have an issue with the term black box. You make it sound inscrutable and unknowable. But there really are many safeguards against using our data blindly. For instance, documenting data sources, model selection, and training methodologies. Ensuring there isn't a Chinese wall, to quote another term you like to use, between AI developers and users. Users must know what they are using and what the ethical expectations are, especially to encourage continuous feedback of how we perform in real-world conditions, because we are still learning.
Now, I know you have a framework for helping understand, helping implementing, helping think about the influence of AI on our thinking and decision making. Do you want to share some of that? What should we be thinking about, just from a very top-down approach?
I think very big. I think very big as citizens of the world, we have to think about, the existential risks. One of the things that people So there's this movie, I'm sure well, I don't know if you're a nerd. I don't know if you're Terminator 2, Skynet. They plug this thing in, and all of a sudden it becomes networked and it becomes sentient, and then it, more or less destroys humanity, except for the brave efforts of John Connor. So I named my son Connor as a result of that. It's not entirely false, that story. So that Terminator scenario, and there are, not dumb people like Elon Musk, who signed a letter saying we need a 90-day moratorium on AI development while we push pause and take stock of the existential risk of humanity. So that's a level, right? Is the existential risk level. And then as citizens of the world, we need to be informed enough to, well, we're not going to be making the decision, but do we have sufficient guardrails in place at a societal level to contain the existential risk? Because right now, Europe is ahead of the US, but I can tell you, there are almost no legislation for restricting development or use cases of AI in the United States. We're leaving it so to Silicon Valley to self-police, to self-regulate, to self-ethics. Well, they don't always do a good job of that, You're trusting Facebook with your data. Oh, it seems like, okay, well, who knew? Who knew?
Yeah, in an election, yeah. So hang on. So societal guardrails, you raise an important point. What are your thoughts, Sam?
Paul's right. In the US, there's no single law to regulate AI, but there are initiatives aimed at ensuring its safe and ethical use, like the executive order on maintaining American leadership in AI to ensure public trust. There's also the National AI Initiative Act, focusing on research, education, and standards. Plus, bills like the Algorithmic Accountability Act, requiring companies to assess and report on their AI systems' impacts on accuracy, fairness, and privacy. In healthcare and finance, laws ensure that AI handling health or credit data follows strict privacy and fairness standards. But it's true, you're not there yet.
But it's interesting that we're getting already to the point where AI is more than the sum of its parts. Because up until now, as you say, it's been narrow. It's been it can only produce what it has access to. But if it can start applying true, not just artificial intelligence, but true intelligence to come up with new things, then we start having a real impact on the human beings it's working alongside. So we'll have AI colleagues. I already have an AI colleague, and I can tell you now, it is improving my workflow like I can't believe. It's giving me ideas that I didn't think, I couldn't put all these things together in my old brain. But I also see the impact that it's having on other people. Some people are able to embrace it and work with it, but it's quite disempowering when it comes to decision making. And it's true that decision making, we want people to make quicker, faster, better decisions. So we will continue to rely more and more on AI. But does that mean we stop investing in our people and in getting their decision making where it should be? Do we reserve decision making only for the most senior leaders and AI does everything else? Where does that leave the human being? What are you seeing on the ground and in the people that you talk to?
There's a movie you may remember from when your son was very young called Wall-E. If you remember the spaceship, the human beings are all supine. Then these enormous big fat people drinking supersized sodas, one imagine, and watching television. Is that our future? When the robots can do everything, they can grow our food, they can get the food farm to table, they can cook. I mean, they're already clever robots making in McDonald's, right? At the bottom end of the thing. But the thing with AI is that it might begin to replace people at the top of the, to use that term, top, bottom, whatever. But anyway, people like lawyers, doctors, judges. And when you think about AI replacing jobs like that, that's what becomes truly scary. Most of the history of technology has been removing jobs from the bottom, so to speak. Not at the top. This is coming for the top or the middle. And so one of the ethical concerns that, my friends at the World Economic Forum are worried about is the effect on jobs. And McKinsey had a headline 18 months or 2 years ago, 85 million jobs lost by 2030. That's a lot of jobs to be displaced, a lot of human livelihoods, which will be adversely affected, having their jobs replaced by an AI. Is that a scenario that ethical decision makers need to Think about it. And the answer is, of course, yes. Now, that's only half the story, because there will also be hundreds of millions of jobs perhaps created. But what often happens is the jobs created and the jobs that are lost don't happen at the same time.
Or in the same sectors, right? It's upskilling, reskilling,
Exactly.
generational divides here as well.
Exactly, generational divides. And so, what do we do about that? Because our history as a species is terrible at looking after people who have been cast aside by technology. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Going back 500 years, the Industrial Revolution, and even before. So, what do we do about that? And we are very bad at taking a 45-year-old worker who's given 20 years to a company who's got children who are approaching university and saying, we're very bad at taking care of that person. We're very bad at retraining them. We're very bad at relocating them. We treat these people without any compassion at all. And the consequences, the political consequences of that are still being felt. I mean, they were felt very acutely in 2016, where the Rust Belt of the United States took up arms, and those arms were built on Trump, and said, hey, you know, we are tired of being cast aside by technology, by globalization, by the elites that make decisions on our behalf. And they look to this fellow as their savior. But so we're still feeling 30 years, 40 years down the road, we're still feeling the consequences of globalization and how poorly we treated people whose jobs were displaced by modest technologies by comparison to a really modest technology. Putting a call center in Thailand or India, it's not like a huge technological breakthrough.
Is it all doom and gloom, or are there pockets of areas, places, industries where they're actually able to rebuild trust through the actions that they're taking in this field? Because ultimately, you know, consumer loyalty, consumer purchases rely on trust between a consumer and or a government or a not-for-profit. Are there areas where something is being done?
I don't think we can count on corporations to take care of us. Don't think, you know, governments rarely have the political will to rein in corporate excesses. So I think it's down to us, it's down to schools, it's down to parents, it's down to communities, it's down to universities, and more enlightened workplaces as well, to take seriously the need to upskill people so that they can prosper in this new world. And I have something I call the accelerated workforce. I don't know if I shared this with you before, but places where there's a lot of learning happening is very exciting places to work. And rather than spending, you know, I mean, to buy a good AI scientist now, it's eye-watering. I mean, I don't really know, but I mean, you know, your average computer programmer makes $80,000 or $100,000 a year. I think your average, you know, really good hot AI, $500,000 a year, $30,000 a year, something like that, no problem. So you either hire as a company as an executive really expensive AI talent, or you could undertake, and you can only get one of them, right? Or you can undertake, how do we reskill the whole workforce? How do I begin to think as an executive about sort of learning 3.0? What do I want my workforce to look like by 2030? And how do I get the L&D people, create a culture of learning right now? And the advantage to that is, one, exciting place to work. Two, you don't have to buy expensive people. Three, you're building capability in AI. If you start at the top, you're going to make better decisions because you understand what this beast is you're reckoning about. I mean, the level of complexity for AI adoption is unlike anything I've ever seen before. If I showed you a slide right now with all of the AI applications that are now ready to go out of the box, there's several hundred just at the application level. And so reskilling your organization towards this is, I think, not just an ethical responsibility, but I think is a commercial responsibility. I mean, I think it makes really hard, good commercial sense to take AI education really, really seriously.
And bring that back to investing in schools and communities. So tying this all the way back to the initial question that we asked, whose ethics do we apply to AI? From everything you've said, it's our ethics. It's the people working in this, on this, and taking care of the people affected by it. It's, again, down to communities, to individuals. It's easy to say it's them, but we actually, I think we each have a role to play. Paul, I think that is the perfect note for us to wrap it up. We've come full circle back to our original question. I always learn so much in talking with you, and I hope that these conversations will continue.
Likewise, likewise. Thank you very much for having me.
Having rewatched and reflected on that interview, that chat with Paul, it feels like we have many, many more questions, of course. So join me as we continue to look for answers, and we'll no doubt find more questions. But this is such an important time as the world shapes itself around this new technology. The more we can equip ourselves, the more we can figure out what the role is that we can play. If we want to be responsible citizens, if we want to make a difference in the future of the world, what is it that we can do? This is what I aim to find out.